Pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Well, folks, I want to introduce the people that I'm joined by today. This is the Floating Collective, and it consists of Mick Utley, Erin McAnally, and Brendan Mayer. They are songwriters, recording artists, performers. It's a great pleasure to have you all with us.
Thanks
for
so
having
much
us
for
on.
having us.
All right.
Good to be here.
I have to say, I've never done anything where I have so many screens in front of me, where I'm joined by people in multiple locations. So this is interesting. But I will say this is kind of a historical moment in some ways. I've never met any of you all, but in some respects, I feel like I know you a little because I've interviewed all of your fathers on multiple occasions. But thank you again. I appreciate this, and I'm looking forward to talking to you all.
It's a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
I've enjoyed your interviews over the years, and I obviously listened to the ones my dad has done with you. So it's a pleasure to finally get to do it myself.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
An honor. Well, I think there's a lot in a name. So what does that mean exactly? Floating collective.
It's a good question. When this project started, we were talking about how many of us kids of the Coral Reefers play music or dabble in music. And so the initial thought was to do something that could include everyone at some point. And so we liked the idea of it being a collective. And we're in the middle of the pandemic and we all kind of felt like we were floating. So it just kind of came together that way. I think, is that the story, guys?
Yeah, it's pretty much it. I've said this before, but I like to think of it kind of like a weekly running club or something that like you just, whoever wants to show up shows up, but you don't run, you float. Just, I don't know.
It actually, the name came up much more easily than I'm used to. I've always really struggled with band names throughout my musical journeys. That's always what seems to come last rather than the songs. But this time, I think we came up with this in maybe a day. I think it was actually one of the first ideas we threw out. And we just liked the, we liked the laid back kind of beach swimming imagery, this idea of like laying on your float in the pool or something like that. But also this feeling of, like Erin was saying, just floating through life right now. I think a lot of us have that feeling like there's not necessarily any real direction. A lot of us are just kind of floating around, waiting to see what the next thing is, where this world leads us. So, floating collective, we just kind of threw those two ideas together, and that's what we came up with.
So you all have this new single out, On the Run, and people can get that on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, all the usual places. It's out, released through Mailboat Records. Tell us about this song, On the Run, which I have to say, it sounds great, but what's the story?
Thank you. Do you guys want to take this one?
Sure. Well, it was, again, sort of pandemic induced. We we had all three had COVID. Wait, sorry, is that violating HIPAA? Brendan?
Yeah, well, I give you the right to say it, I guess.
So we were able to get together, and that's how it kind of the three of us as the sort of main core came together, because we're sort of neighbors. We lived near each other. And so we had written a thing or two, and when we sat down to write this, we were talking about sort of traveling in your mind during the pandemic. We're all, everybody's itching to sort of get out and see new things. And so we did that in song version.
Yeah, and Erin actually, I think, first came up with the line. She was just like, I don't really know what this means or what this means in the context of this song, but she just had the line, Massachusetts was a bust. And we didn't really know what that meant at the time, but the song is really interesting to me because it tells this kind of love story, the classic, to people who can't quite figure it out at the same time, chasing each other. And we took that and said, well, what if they're physically chasing each other over the country? And so starting with that Massachusetts was a bus line, the song actually kind of became strangely autobiographical the more we dug in, like all these places we reference in the song, we've actually lived or have like strong emotional, physical connections to have spent part of our lives. You know, we talk about Massachusetts, Nashville, Tennessee, LA. So it's kind of cool how it all came together. I don't know how intentional that was, but it seemed to work out.
Well, what has the Floating Collective been up to these days? Anything you're working on now?
Yeah, we're writing. We are just writing, trying to catch another fish, I guess, as they say. Getting together when we can and coming up with material, and definitely going to be releasing some more stuff this year.
Yeah, we were really flattered by the response that people seem to have to the first song. So we've been getting together weekly and just kind of making it a standing date where we get together and throw some ideas together. And we've got already a couple more nearly finished. And, you know, it's a strange time to be making music. No one really knows what the best way to do it is right now, like, especially when you can't tour. But we figure we're just going to keep racking up songs and hopefully put out a full, EP or an album some point later this year.
Well, that makes me think about this. I'm sure, like most people on planet Earth, you all are dreaming about going somewhere. And since you all have music and you're creating music right now, is there a place collectively that you all would love to perform?
Oh, that's a good question.
I've never thought about that. I'm not as much of a performer as the two of them, so I'll let them.
What do you think, Brendan?
I think the idea of performing anywhere sounds fantastic right now. But that being said, I love the festival vibe. I think we would be so thrilled to be doing something outdoors with a whole bunch of people there, maybe in hopefully good weather. So I don't know, that most like desired place to play. Are you talking about specific venues or more locations?
Like maybe like a city.
City. Okay.
I mean, when I first heard the
Yeah,
single,
yeah.
I pictured you guys someplace in New Orleans.
I wouldn't say no to that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't say no to that.
Yeah, we'll go.
It's a
It is
date.
one of my favorite cities.
Yeah. Well, okay. So maybe the dream for next year's Jazz Fest. There we go.
I'm in.
I like it.
Thanks for helping to shape our dreams.
Yeah.
There you go. I know. We need a vision board.
Well, I would really like to know. I'm very fascinated by the process of how people collaborate. What is the process when the Floating Collective writes songs? Is there a certain way that you all do it?
I scribble. They come up with the sort of framework for everything, and I sort of scribble while they're doing that, and then I'll throw out ideas, and then we kind of run with those typically.
Yeah,
is that fair?
For sure. I mean, mostly so far we've written with Brendan on guitar. Sometimes I hop behind a piano, but generally no. Yeah, and just
it's funny. Yeah, we it's like I don't think you ever go into it saying this is how we're going to do this process. It always seems to or just kind of flow naturally. So the first day we got together, it kind of just Erin she's kind of I think our finest wordsmith usually. So she has some sort of lyric ideas, and then I'll start banging around on guitar, and Mick will start humming along, or hit some piano chords. And we do kind of, it seems like we've settled into a little bit of a groove where we generally go about it a certain way. But who knows? That's for the first 3 or 4 songs. That might change up as we start exploring more. But yeah, these guys are so fantastic to work with. It's definitely one of the easiest dynamics I've ever been involved with.
Back at you, Brendan.
Yeah, definitely back at you. Brendan's coming up with melodies left and right. It's pretty amazing to watch him work.
For sure.
Well, you just said Erin is a wordsmith, and I've read a number of articles that you've written throughout the time. And most recently, some people might be familiar with the piece that you did on the great John Anderson. Oh, yeah. And I'm curious to know who, through your journalistic endeavors have you been in particular in awe to be able to speak to?
Oof. Well, John was a big one for me. I grew up being a huge fan of his, and also everyone that I've ever known that has known him just is sort of in awe of him as a human as well. So I was very excited to have that conversation. He was fantastic to talk to. I'm a huge Alabama Shakes and Brittany Howard fan. And so I've sort of peripherally known her for some time through mutual friends, but getting to sit down and interview her was really great as well. She's such a musical visionary. That was really, really awesome. And then I've done some political journalism that I've really enjoyed over the years. I like talking to people on both sides of the aisle.
Could you all answer this question, and you can do it in a philosophical way, any way that you want to attack it? What makes a good song a good song?
I'm not one of those people who thinks there's a formula. I know I've heard, Max Martin, the famous pop writer, producer, from what I've heard, and I don't want to get this wrong, but he talks a lot about a specific formula that every hit song has to have, right? And I think he's pretty uncompromising when it comes to not deviating
Song
from that press. Yeah. And I'm obviously he's doing something right, because he's probably the most successful producer of all time. But for me, I've never been able to put my finger on the formula. So I don't know if there's something definable that makes a good song a good song. I think it's somewhat about personal connection. That was one thing that was difficult for me to realize early in my songwriting career, that not everyone's going to like what you think is great. I've written songs where I was like, man, this is it. This is the song that's going to make me. And maybe other people didn't feel that way. So thinking about that, I don't know. I think a good song is a good song for some people, and it comes down to emotional connection. Maybe that's kind of the first thing I think of.
I remember reading, I'll totally botch this, but a quote at some point from Michael Stipe, who basically said something along the lines of, if you felt it and you write it, that someone's going to connect to it, no matter how weird it is or whatever it is. And so I like to remember that when we're writing, that it doesn't have to be, you don't have to write in universality. There's somebody's going to connect with whatever strange feelings you've had in some way, and I think you're right. I think songs are about connection, whether it be the melody or the timbre of the song or the lyrics. It is about those connections.
And what's interesting is that certainly there's some songs that just connect with a whole lot of people, that objectively it's just a ton of people love this song. So does that make it a better song? I don't know, but clearly there are elements that seem to be universal, right? I mean, yeah.
What about for you, Mick?
I'm going to misquote him, like you guys have said. You've misquoted your people too. But when Marcellus says good music is anything you can tap your foot to, and I'm kind of into that. Like anything that you like is good. Anybody enjoying music is positive. So that's kind of where my thoughts lie.
Yeah, and I mean, that might reference groove too. Like I know a lot of people truly believe that groove and feel is the most fundamental component of a good song. Like the old adage, I think I heard my dad tell me at one point, like that some jazz guy had passed on to him, was like, basically like, it doesn't really matter if you screw up the changes, but you have to play in time. Like if it doesn't feel good, you can throw everything else out the window. Like you can kind of get away with fudging melodic things because you can just be like, well, I'm going to do a chromatic lick here, and make it work. But if it doesn't feel good, then you got nothing. So maybe that was partly what Winton was talking about too.
Yeah, I'm into that.
What excellent answers. Has the fact that you all have been around music your entire life, has that in any way more or less demystified the whole thing, the processes of songwriting and recording?
I will say this, the business of music demystifies it. It's the business of music is not fun, but the process of music is magical. I mean, it
That's
really
exactly
is.
what I was going to say, E. Yeah, it still feels magical to me every single day.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, a lot of people talk about like being inspired when you're writing as like these things already being there and you're like kind of grabbing them. And I think that's like a common theme for a reason. It is magic. There's no way really to describe it. It's just, you kind of just have to be open to it.
Yeah.
Well, I got a few questions from some people who I think that they have some good questions, and so I have no shame in outsourcing. This question comes from Mr. Peter Mayer, and this is his question for Brendan Mayer. He says, "What has amazed me about Brendan is that he will take an idea or two and come out with a song called Getaway Car. How does this happen? Luck, intellect, the muse, monetary inspiration, or momentary?" This is what, as a songwriter, I am fascinated with.
Yeah, well, I can speak to that specific song. What helped there was having a fantastically talented dad who gave me the song title. That was one of those songs, and every songwriter I've ever talked to has talked about this basically, but there are definitely the fallen from the sky songs that happen to you a few times in your life where it's just easy. It's just easy. You know, Bob Dylan, I think, talked about how he wrote Blowing in the Wind in like 10 minutes. Some songs just, and obviously I'm not talking about Getaway in the Car in the same terms as Blowing in the Wind, but some songs just kind of fall into your lap. And that was certainly one of those. I don't know if I can say that there was any specific motivation for writing that song, but all of a sudden I just started singing a melody, and I knew that I was saying something that was important to me, and it was an important emotional outlet for me at that time. And it was something that was just easy to sing. And I think the best songs are usually come out that way.
Okay, so I have a question from Michael Utley, and this question is for Mick. And I should tell all the viewers and listeners out there that back in the day, I'm talking like 16, 17 years ago, Michael Utley used to feed me questions to ask people. So this is something that he has practice with. But he wanted to know from Mick. He had a lot of questions actually, but I'll pick a few of them. He says, when did the Mick Utley Trio begin playing at the Jazz Room, F. Scott's in Nashville?
I think I was about 16, maybe 16, 17. I don't remember. Somewhere around there, maybe right when that happened, when I turned 17.
Tell them what it is.
McAnally Trio is not the name that I picked, but it is the name that we settled on because it's generally like if you have a piano trio, you name it after the piano player or whatever. Basically, we were trying to learn how to play jazz and decided that we weren't really going to get that good without having to do it in front of people on the bandstand, as they say. And so we finagled our way into this gig, and for whatever reason was able to keep it through college. And yeah, it was the best way to learn how to play jazz. This is one of the best learning experiences for me as a musician, for sure.
They were great. I saw them. I went to brunch there once.
Yeah, me too. Actually, before I really ever even hung out with Mick, I think I went to see him with probably with my dad. They were fantastic. I was so in awe of what they were doing because I always fancied myself like a wannabe jazz guitarist, you know, because my dad came from that background, and Pat Metheny is like one of my all-time musical heroes. But I could never really do it all that well, play the jazz stuff, and maybe it's just I didn't put in the hours, but Mick certainly did, and it was really inspiring to see someone, you know, my age doing it at a high level then. So
I don't know about high level, but I appreciate it.
well, you did a good job of faking it then.
I mean, yeah, it definitely does take a lot of hours for a lot of people, a lifetime to figure out how to play jazz.
Are there any bootlegs surviving of the Mick Utley trio?
There are,
I've heard his audition tapes. for
yeah,
school.
there's an audition tape because I went to school for jazz performance. So there's that, but that's not the Mick Utley trio. I had one of my teachers play with me. I think there's probably some video, but I don't know if there's maybe. I don't know. I don't have any.
When did you get really interested in the piano?
I was maybe 12 or 13 when I started to play by ear. My dad showed me a few hot licks, and then I started playing along with records I liked.
He also asks, when did you first play in front of an audience?
He's probably wanted. He asked me. He has his band Club Trini, and this was like really early on. I had taken lessons growing up, but so I had like some fundamentals. But I think this was within the first year of like really being into learning how to play. I played with Club Trini in New Orleans, sat in with them. So that was probably the first, and probably like one of the biggest crowds I played to for the next 10 years at least.
And I believe there are pictures that survive from that gig.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Our friend Lewis took some.
Well, this is the last question from Michael Utley to Mick Utley. How was Birdland?
Oh my God, good one, Pops. So this is the year, I think it was like 2001. It was pretty close. They were playing the Garden, and it was pretty close to 9/11, maybe in November. And so we went to New York to see the show, and I was already interested in music and jazz, and so we went to dinner and then went to Birdland. We saw Ron Carter play with his like string. I want to say it was like a sextet or something, but I was 14 and I always kind of looked older for my age. For some reason, I was able to get into Birdland at 14. And my dad and I remember split a bottle of wine, and I felt funny afterwards for a 14-year-old, but it was really cool. I mean, we were like 6 feet from Ron Carter. It was amazing. Really cool experience.
Interesting story.
You're gonna get your dad arrested.
Yeah.
I mean, in New Orleans, I used to go into clubs like before that. They didn't really care as much back then, but I had long hair and I would put it in a ponytail, and I was already tall. It was like, whatever.
Great ponytail disguise.
Exactly.
What else would you like to confess?
Yeah. This is your chance, Mick.
Well, you know what's coming. This question is for Erin McAnally, and it comes from Mac McAnally. And he said, I have a silly question and I have a more serious one. So here's the silly one. He said, ask this one first. What inherited trait would you most like to get rid of?
Man, I have a deep-seated inability to keep a clean car. It comes directly through his bloodline. Luckily, we've joined bloodlines here, and the Utleys keep a very clean car.
We keep it tight.
So we balance each other. I think I've gotten somewhat better, but yeah, I would ditch that trait.
Well, this is the more serious one. He says, I am envious of her ability to be both creative and organized. How in the world is this possible?
Well, not to get too, I don't think it's dark, but I do think I had a reaction early on. I was musical from childhood on, but I was shy about it because of Dad. Not like it's his fault, but because he existed in that world and that was his. I think I was shy to put that at the forefront of what I did on a day-to-day basis. Just because he was so good at it and so successful at it, it just I don't know. I just sort of ran away from it. So I went and really dug in my heels in school and taught myself how to be. I was not good at school, but I think through high school and college, I got really involved in the community, and I also learned how to study. And that is how I learned to be organized, I think, and sort of how I got involved and really dug in on the business side of things. Yeah.
Well, thank you to all of our contributing question submitters.
Those were excellent.
And for the great answers, everybody. Brendan, do you know who Jeff Pike is?
I do. Yeah, I've met Jeff many times. Fantastic guy.
Well, you know, the first time he ever saw you perform, I didn't get to go to that show, but I wanted to tell you that he drove home and he called me immediately and he said, "You need to get this guy's CD right away. It's excellent."
So what year was this?
This was, I guess, a few years back, but I remember that because it was odd to get a call from him at like 11:30.
Wow. Yeah, I wonder if it was probably when we were in Atlanta playing. And yeah, well, I'm very flattered. I guess he's probably talking about the Getaway Car EP, which came out in 2014. And I was very proud to have so many fantastic people help me out with that record. It was truly collaborative, and honestly, much thanks to these two guys' parents. You know, Mike and Mac both played a big role in helping that thing come together. And my dad, of course, and my uncle Jim and Eric Darkin and a bunch of the Coral Reefers helped me out with that project because I was on tour with the band, with JB and the band that summer. And so I'm really proud of what we came out with, but it was truly a group effort. That was not solely mine, even though it had my name on it.
You're very, very humble.
Well, it's those
That's good.
German Lutheran roots. It's in the DNA, I guess.
Well, for Mick and Erin, there's something that you all do which is very interesting, and it's been much applauded by a lot of people. And I believe the name of it is changing now, but you all have been doing this series of interviews. And I'm hoping you can tell us about this experience, which for people like me who are interviewers, it provides very valuable resource materials. So tell us about this thing that you've been doing.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad that it's resource material. That's fantastic to hear. It doesn't do what?
And entertainment.
Oh, that's very important as well. Well, it doesn't feel like work at all because especially, last season, it was just catching up with our family. There are people that we see, many times a year, typically. And we have since we were kids. So to get to catch up with them over Zoom was really fun. And we learned so much about each and every coral reefer. Okay. Sorry. So it's just been really fun. It's been really fun to collaborate together. We've collaborated musically over the years, obviously, but have never worked together. So this has been a really fun project, and we're excited about this season. The name is changing slightly.
At Home with Friends of the Coral Reefers. But yeah, we're excited about that one. It's got some really good guests lined up. It'll be coming out once a month this time, as opposed to every week. But very excited about a lot of the guests, all the guests we have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Confirmed.
Well, I would have to ask, or otherwise I would be kicked out of something. Who is maybe a guest that you can tell us about that is forthcoming?
Ooh. Well, our first was last week with Will Kimbrough. We're really excited about. Mm-hmm. We don't have anyone locked in yet, so I feel a little shy to say, since it's happening monthly. We haven't planned out the whole year, but we have a wish list of some folks like that might seem kind of obvious, like Jake Shimabukuro, who is a good friend of mine or ours, and who else? Marshall Chapman.
Great.
Definitely, maybe Mary Gaucher. Who else? We have some old Coral Reefers on the list as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Brendan said he called him JB, but of course he was referring to Jimmy Buffett. And I wrote a review of the last Buffett studio album, and I
Yeah, it
was
was wonderful.
mentioning. Oh, thank you.
I saw it. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to get a little bit of background on this. I have noticed that something that Jimmy Buffett frequently does. Frequently, the real knockout song from an album is the last track. He does that all the time. And I wrote in the review that the best song was written with you two, Erin and Mick, and Mr. Buffett. What was it like hearing such a legendary artist as Jimmy Buffett sing something that you wrote?
Well, it was wild because that happened again so sort of naturally. The idea came together so easily in Mick's parents' living room. And then, flash forward, what was it, 8 months?
Yeah, maybe.
So when the recording happened, and so we had laid down this framework that felt very natural to us, and then we were lucky enough that Jimmy liked it, and he really spun gold out of it. We think it turned out really, really great. But it's very much him. So I think it was a nice balance of what we had started and how he finished it.
Absolutely. It's a real honor.
I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, thank you. Too kind.
My pleasure. And the title of that song is "Book on the Shelf." We should mention. So
That's
if they haven't downloaded it, please check that out. Now, you all have met, and you've known Jimmy Buffett for such a long time. Do you think that the man is fully understood?
Wow. Deep question.
I think, yeah, I mean, I actually do get that question asked a lot, by fans when I'm out playing. What's Jimmy really like, right? And we all ask that. I wonder that about my very favorite celebrities and musical icons. I'd say Jimmy is, I would go as far to say he's probably one of the most authentic celebrities out there. I mean, what you see on stage is truly who he is. So I don't know, is he fully understood? I don't think he gets enough credit for his songwriting. So I think like the masses, maybe like in terms of the general pop culture notion of who Jimmy Buffett is, I don't think he's totally understood, but I think amongst his fans, he is. I think who they see and what draws him to them is real. It is real. So in that sense, I would say yes.
I think one thing that maybe people don't quite realize is like, Dad said I can balance creative and business, but it's like nothing compared to Jimmy. Jimmy is incredible he's very creative and very passionate about music. And just anecdotally, we were at a dinner with him a few years ago, and in the middle of the dinner, he just got up and started playing with the band. The band was amazing. It was such a great band. And he still got that passion for what's happening around, the music that's happening around him, but he's also just an incredible businessman. So I think, he has the sort of air of being this carefree person, which in many ways he is. He's very energetic and can be that way, but he's also just laser focused as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with both of you. Very much so. I don't know. I don't want to speak for him. But I think many fans do put him in this category, but I definitely do. He is for sure one of the great American songwriters.
For sure.
And, maybe peripherally, like people don't see that with the shows being this, big circus spectacle, amazing thing that people love to go to. But at its core, they're incredible songs.
For the music of the Floating Collective, would you say that there is a guiding philosophy to what you all do?
I'm so glad you asked, because that's unlike any project I've ever been involved with, I think this is the most focused group I've ever had the pleasure of making music with. When we got together, we were really intentional about deciding on a sound and kind of creating a calling card for ourselves that people could really latch onto as we move forward. So when you hear the name Floating Collective, you immediately picture something. And I think you can see that we made a Spotify playlist, mostly Mick actually, that is kind of
group effort.
Well, it's I forget what it's called, but it's basically kind of built around a lot of the classic Laurel Canyon stuff. So at the end of the day, we decided that that's what we wanted this, not like that we're trying to imitate any of these classic California Laurel Canyon artists, but we wanted it to have that feel. So is that fair, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Well, just something that would be also easy to collaborate on if other people wanted to join us.
Yeah.
We could pile a bunch of vocals on.
Exactly. I mean, that whole idea started from the resources that we had. I mean, you're looking at right now 2 people that play acoustic guitar and 3 people that sing, and I play some piano and produce. But most people who would be collaborating either sing or play guitar. So that kind of led us to a place where we wanted to do something folky and something where kind of everyone could join the band, but very influenced by, things that came out of California, Los Angeles, 60s, 70s, the whole canyon sound.
Would you say that there's one band or one artist that collectively you guys, you all agree, all hail this person or this band?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think there probably are few, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are you talking about? We have a lot of overlap.
Within the context of like what we're doing with Floating Collective, or?
Yeah, you all mutually, the 3 of you guys agree. We all love this artist or band.
I think on the reverse side of that, I don't think that we've ever come across anybody that one of us liked that the others didn't like.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Yeah. We all obviously come from slightly different backgrounds, but yeah, there's a whole lot of commonalities in the way we think about music and what we're drawn to. The fact that, Mick has a jazz background was always one of the most appealing things to me about getting to work with him, because I love that language. And like I said, I never felt like I could do it very well, but I certainly love to have those little bits, those little influences come out in the music I make. So
thanks, man.
So we would probably all say Bill Evans, right? I mean,
the classic, kind of getting at, like, probably Pat Metheny is like one of the biggest people that we grew up with, whatever, but definitely not a direct influence on Floating Collective.
Right.
We can all agree on Joni Mitchell, right?
Definitely.
Joni Mitchell, absolutely.
Joni Mitchell, CSNY.
Yeah. Amen.
Jackson Browne,
for sure.
I was thinking that you all had to be Joni Mitchell fans. I just thought that has to come up.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean,
it's my mom's favorite artist of all time.
So otherworldly.
Yeah.
Well, on this show, something I always like to do is I like to give the guests the stage. And it's a broad, very open-ended question. You just never know who's watching. You never know who's listening. What would you say to anybody who's tuned in?
Wow. I would say, if you feel like creating, create. Because I know that sounds cheesy, but I think I waited until I was very, I don't know. I waited till like my early to mid 30s to actually make things that I showed people, if that makes sense. And that's the way it worked for me. But I think I always wanted to create more when I was growing up, and I didn't. So that would be my advice, or whatever, just whoever's listening, is you know, if you have those feelings inside of you, make it. Somebody's going to connect to it. And I think now is as good a time as any to put stuff out in the world.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's really well said. Not sure what my overall big message. Mick, do you have anything? Because I'm kind of
I
still.
mean, I think that's incredibly inspiring, and just, I mean, how could you? That's one of the best things you could say. I was going to say something very selfish and say, please buy or stream or on the run.
Yeah, we'd like to keep creating too. So.
We're very excited to make music, and yeah.
I would say in this crazy world, I hope everyone just knows that music is still worth it. It's a hard time for a lot of artists out there right now, and I know a lot of musicians. It's tough. I mean, and I just consider myself so very lucky to still be able to get to make music in a world where everything seems to be falling apart. It's really sad, but I know of multiple musicians who have given it up completely over this past year because they felt like it no longer made sense financially, or they had finally, like, this was the universe telling them they needed to go out and quote unquote get a real job, you know. So I just hope that if there's anyone who loves music or loves to make music out there listening, keep the faith. It's going to come back. It's still worth it. It still makes life worth living to me every single day. It makes it a little better. So yeah, cheers to music.
Love that. Cheers.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Floating Collective, Mick Utley, Erin McAnally, Brendan Mayer, thank you so much. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah,
And thanks
I
for
really appreciate it.
Thanks for reaching out to our dads. That was a cool perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never thought anyone would ever say that to me.
We got some pretty cool dads. So I not to brag, but
that's very true.
All right, folks. Until next time.
All right. Thank you.
Take care, Paul.
Thanks. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.